Well, hello, Sarah's iPhone. Should I turn off my virtual background? I'm wearing a shirt that's the same color, so I'm going to look like a floating head today. You guys mind if I look like a floating head today, or should I turn off my background? Is it distracting? Have you guys played much with virtual backgrounds, by the way, in Zoom? Made up your own, downloaded your own? Look, my coffee cup's even weird. No webcam to do so. So you don't have a lap. I thought most laptops have webcams on them. You don't have a more modern laptop. That's okay. You know, interestingly about that, by the way, you know, when this whole COVID-19 thing came down back in March and everybody said everybody was ordered to stay home, I was telling my friends and buddies, oh, you just go on Amazon.com, buy a webcam. They're like 20 bucks or something. Well, they went up to about 60 or 100 bucks, or you couldn't get them. But here's something that you can use for those of you who don't have a webcam. This is not part of the class, but this is helpful information. Wyze, W-Y-Z-E. Anybody ever heard of that company, Wyze? They used to make terminals, dumb terminals. Let me share my screen and I will show you something that will be very helpful for you guys. I just installed a few of these cameras. Now, who has heard of the Ring doorbell cameras and Simply Safe and these companies that have these rather expensive cameras? Anybody priced out a Ring doorbell lately? They're like 200 bucks for a Ring doorbell. Can you guys see my shared screen okay, by the way? Was that a, I see good, Jessica. By the way, I got your email, Jessica, and I got other people's emails. I've read them, looked at stuff, have not responded to as many of them as I need to respond to yet. I'll get to those. I know some of you are stuck. I know some of you are at certain points. I'll get you guys moving along, but Wyze camera. Check out these cameras. 25 bucks from Amazon gets you an HD camera that'll sit on your desk, and they are security style cameras, but they have USB ports on the back, and you can, as long as you have a USB port on your computer, you can use it as a Zoom camera. You don't have to use it as a security camera. Although I think they're great. For 25 bucks, they have a version of this Wyze camera called the Wyze Cam Pan, which I just installed a few yesterday. 40 bucks for a pan tilt zoom camera. These things literally move around and pan and tilt, and it's crazy how cheap they are. And unlike the Ring camera service where you have to pay monthly for a service, it's not very expensive monthly, but you have to pay for it. They give you cloud storage for free. They don't give it to you for long, like 14 days. But if you guys need to stick a security camera in your dorm room or your apartment or in your home, looking out the front door or out the window or whatever, for 40 bucks and 2 weeks worth of video storage, it's pretty good stuff. So go check those guys out, Wyze. Not trying to be a commercial for them. It's just that when I find a good deal on stuff and find stuff that technically works really well, I try to tell people about it. Oh, I noticed the white's coming through on my beard, and so starting to throw off the virtual background there. So anyway, I should have mentioned that to the 4477 class. All righty, so where you guys probably are, some of you, not everybody, but that's okay. I'm going to help you guys get there. We're not going to have a Zoom meeting tomorrow. I'll be using that time to help you guys get to where you need to be definitely by this weekend. I need you to be here so we can do other stuff next week. Sorry, hang on. 192.168.10.200:8006. How are you guys feeling about the class, by the way? Do you feel like you're learning stuff? This is probably very different than most classes you guys are taking because it's pretty much 100% research and there aren't tests per se. But I can kind of tell because I don't have a lot of students. I can tell based on your progress, based on logging into the Proxmoxies and looking at the activity or the lack thereof activity, whether or not you guys are doing anything or not. And the people that aren't doing anything, including not emailing me either, saying, hey, I'm stuck somewhere, or behind in the class. If you're stuck somewhere, but you've sent me 4 or 5 emails and we're slowly pushing you forward to get you there, you're okay. But if I'm not hearing from you and you're not making any progress, then you need to get on the ball. Okay, so what I had showed you in last class, showed you a couple of times now, is how to get LAMP installed, how to modify some configuration files, how to use the apt as well as Yum on CentOS. So, and also how to create a little test PHP program or PHP script, not really a program. What PHP is used for is you embed the code in the HTML, which gets sent down to the client. The code doesn't get sent to the client. The code is executed on the server, creates content, which is embedded in the HTML, then that's sent down to the client computer. It's a little bit different than JavaScript. But I'm assuming that some of you have written some JavaScript by now. Yes, no, maybe? What are you guys writing? What are you guys using for a programming language in Parks's classes right now, by the way? Is it JavaScript? Or is it PHP? Is it Perl? What is it? It's JavaScript.
I think we're using, I mean, when I was taking it, we were using, so I think that's still what they're using.
You were using what? You were using JavaScript before? Oh, that's weird looking. And so before we were teaching it with ActiveX, which is kind of dead now. Before that, we were using and teaching people COBOL. We don't teach people COBOL anymore. So here's the next cool thing that I want you guys to do in terms of playing with and learning how to use this, all these great open tools. I consider the internet kind of like a store, not even a dollar store, a store that you can walk in and find all these tools laying around. Hey, here's a tool. A bunch of people are using this tool. They seem to like it. I think I'll pick up my own version of this tool and start using it without knowing much how to use this tool or having to learn how to use this tool. That's kind of like what using open source software is like, and I love it. I like that. I like the lack of the structure because I can figure out what I can do with those tools to either solve a current issue, or I can use these tools to dream up new applications and new ways of doing things that people are not haven't thought of yet, for example. So, you know, this is where the Amazon.coms and the Facebooks of the world and online trading, this is where these kinds of things are born out of, is open systems. Like the Wise cameras, for example. Those cameras are all Linux-based systems. So is Ring, Alexa, and does anybody have any of the Google Home devices, or is everybody just using Alexa right now? Or does anybody have Alexa? That's all Linux-based. Those are not just used, and a lot of stuff that I talk about it in terms of consumer grade products and consumer use, but there are many, many more uses for that kind of automation in the commercial world and in the business world. being able to do more with less people. As I mentioned in my 4477 class yesterday, people cost the most amount of money. Unless your company's in business to drill for oil, or you're building ships or something massively physical like that, your number one cost is people. By the way, unfortunately, that means that when your company's not doing well, what's the first thing to go? Is people. Let's lay off 10,000 people. I heard that who just laid off a bunch of people? Oh, AT&T. You would think AT&T would be hiring people, but they have lots of competition that they never had before. So they are laying off thousands of people. Hope nobody here works for AT&T. I hear they're one of the worst companies in the world to work for, so don't do it. Anyway, what was I talking about? I got a little off topic. Oh, the Wise camera, the Linux stuff. So I love that there's these tools laying around. So let's take a situation, a real world situation, a need that's already out there, and try to see if we can use open source tools to meet that need. Let's say that you are tasked with developing a web presence for your company, a website for your company. So let's pretend you have nothing, no infrastructure in place yet, except maybe some hardware. So, and you maybe have even a virtual environment in place, such as Proxmox or VMware, where you can build some virtual machines on to provide that service. Now, are there other ways of doing this? Yes, you can use SaaS. Does everybody know what SaaS stands for? Anybody? Does anybody know what SaaS stands for? Yes, that's correct. Now, what class did you learn that in, guys? Did you learn that in another class? You did. You learned it in the SAD class, Systems Analysis and Design. So what is, for those of you that don't know what that means, what does SaaS mean? Or what does software as a service mean? And why is it not appropriate for a lot of organizations? Unsecure, maybe. Since nobody's really talking and you're just typing, it'll be kind of slow. This is what I hear most people say. Software as a service is basically like renting a car. Using somebody else's car. It's easy, it's cheap, it's temporary, or actually car rental is not that cheap. So maybe that analogy doesn't ring true 100%, but it's easier. I don't need to go out and buy a car. I can just temporarily use one. Let somebody else worry about the headaches of repairing it. All I got to do is put gas in it even. So I guess true software as a service would mean you were given a car and they gas it up for you even. That doesn't work that well for most organizations, especially large organizations or organizations that need to customize what their appearance looks like on the internet, customize what their world looks like. Facebook, for example, could not use software as a service to come up with something that looks like Facebook, nor would they want to. So let's go down to the next layer, the next couple of layers, and say, well, let's go ahead and build an operating system. Let's build our own operating system and install our own apps or tools of our choosing to allow us to create a web presence. Or I shouldn't even say a web presence. I should say an internet presence for an organization. I know my typing is bad. So what kind of elements are common with every organization with respect to an internet presence? Just name some. Of course, you've got a website, and websites do multiple things. They're informational. They're marketational, if that's a word. We use them for marketing. They are operational. In other words, sometimes you provide a website to your end user, your customers, end users or customers, because it actually does something for them. It's calculating some numbers, it's looking up some data and providing the users with balances, for example, or how much money they owe. And then what goes hand in hand with that is entertainment. That kind of that goes underneath operational. What other applications or elements are important for an internet presence? Yeah, subscription software, that's another one. Blogging, I guess we can put that under a separate. That's all Facebook really is. And Instagram, all this is blogging or vlogging. TikTok. What else? What's maybe underneath some of these or a major need for most organizations? Email, aka communication. Not just blogging, but communication. File transfer, or file sharing, I should say. And there's a few other things, but those are the three primary groupings of applications or services we want to provide to an organization to have an internet presence, a web presence, an email presence for communication, and a file sharing presence. With the LAMP stack installed on your virtual machine, you have all the tools there to provide all of that. But you can only provide it easily for one entity on that virtual machine. So let's say your entity is xyz.com or XYZ, and you registered a name called xyz.com. So you can log into your virtual machine here. Let's see, I've got, I don't remember which one of these has the LAMP stack installed on it. I think we did it on that one. So let me get into that one. Oh, that one's not. Hang on one sec for me. That's probably 2.201 if I had to guess, right? Yeah, 10.201. Okay, so let me SSH over there. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I installed LAMP, but even if I didn't, I don't need LAMP. Well, I do need LAMP, but installing this package I'm going to talk about today, Webmin and Virtualmin, will install LAMP for me. Sorry, I'm trying to find, there it is. I was trying to find my putty pop-up. So let's see, 192.168. I'm not sure if my container is available for SSH, so I'm just going to go 10 to 200. I'm going to go to Proxmox 2 directly. And first, let's just talk about, after we've set up LAMP, let's talk about where, I've already showed you, but let's talk about it again, where the documents are stored. Appearance, change, 16. One of these days, I'll save that as the default. So I already pointed out several directories, but one of them was var www html, which gets, well, excuse me. Oh, maybe sorry. Proxmox doesn't have a web server. Move this real quick. I skipped a step. PCT enter 201. Now I'm in that container I created. So when we installed the LAMP stack, or the Apache part of the LAMP stack, it created this folder for us. And we experimented around by creating an index.html that said hello Jake or Jake Rocks, whatever it is in there. But let's say we want to not be programmers. We don't want to write a bunch of code from scratch, a bunch of HTML. And yes, you certainly could. And we used to do that in the old days, write a bunch of code from scratch to provide email services and blogging services and file transfer services. But there's already lots of packages out there which can work somewhat like software as a service that we can download and use, and they're flexible enough, especially since it's open source. We can modify it all we want if we did need to customize it. So first of all, let's talk about this challenge. Let's say we have multiple websites that we want to project out into the world. We've only got one IP address. Back in the old days, you had to have one IP address per domain. Everything that went under var.www.html. What I would do is I would go find a registrar like GoDaddy or Network Solutions, or there's about 24 in the United States. I use a couple different ones, namecheap.com. I use them, and I would associate this IP address, not this one, the public one that's on the firewall, with this server, so that any traffic going to port 80 would come to this server and look in that folder. Well, that's great if I had one domain, but what if I have multiple domain names? What if I wanted to provide this platform to several other companies, several other small companies that don't have their own servers? What if I wanted to be the software as a service provider to other companies? We can use Virtualmin. Now, Virtualmin comes with another tool underlying called Webmin. We used to install Webmin. And Webmin is kind of a play on words and what Webmin does when you install it. And I'll show you an example of Webmin. I use it for my servers. I have both Virtualmin and Webmin installed. I use Webmin so that I don't have to use SSH to go log in and do a lot of the operational tasks that you normally would need to do on a server. Such as, remember how I talked about cron jobs and timing the other day? You know, jobs that you can fire off at certain times. I've got this job that runs, or these jobs that run periodically to make sure that my servers, my client's servers, and some other servers in the world are up and running. And if they're not, I want to know about it. I should be sent an email or a text message. Oh, that server's not up. Now, I could have written some individual code to do that. It would have been rather complex. Or I downloaded this package called Webmin, which has many, many modules that you can download. This isn't all the modules, and this is actually an old version of Webmin. One of those modules was this, system and server status. I can basically create a watchdog. And I don't have to be SSH'd in, and I don't have to be editing, and this is why this is nice. I don't have to be editing configuration files at the command line. One, that's complicated. Two, it's dangerous, very, very specific. If you edit, you make one little typo. You put a comma instead of a dot somewhere, and you've fudged your whole server possibly. So installing a tool that is not a GUI, this is not a GUI. That's the important thing I want to point out here. This is not a web GUI. We don't like web GUIs to run on servers. Web GUIs, you know, where you're moving a mouse around and you got icons on the screen and all that, that slows computers down. And web GUIs are really only for an end user or a client computer running things where they need a nice hand-holding a backdrop for them to operate applications and multiple applications. But if you want to install something that works kind of like a web GUI, in other words, it kind of gives you some hand-holding. In other words, rather than providing 10,000 tools on the ground for you to use, pick up and figure out, well, where's that tool? Oh, here it is. And start using it. I'm going to provide you a nice clean wall of 5 or 6 cabinets on the wall, and each one of those 5 or 6 cabinets has specific categories of tools. Like, here are the tools that deal with file manipulation, and here's all the tools that deal with email, and here's all the tools that deal with setting up usernames and passwords, and here's all the tools that you might want to use to set up websites for people. So that's what these GUI packages, these web-based packages, and Webmin's not the only one. Web-based packages, here's 3 that are available. There's Webmin, then there's also one called cPanel, and there's also one called Plesk. And there are more, but these are the top 3 in the world. These are like the Ford, Chrysler, and GM of dashboard panels or web-based admin panels in the world. Oh, that's probably a big commercial for cPanel. What do you recommend? Let's take a look at this one, Web Hosting Talk. I like webhostingtalk.com. So lots of people, oh God. Continue to say, lots of people have been using cPanel for a long time. And it gives you very clear, concise, and only a few icons on the screen at one time, and it categorizes things for you. It helps you find things easier. Table of contents, a menu, that kind of stuff. Plesk and Webmin are the same way, but the reason that I like Webmin is because it requires no licensing. In other words, it's an open system. I can download it and start using it, and all I have to do is promise that I won't use it to do bad things. And if I decide to modify its source code to do something different, then I agree to upload that source code and make it public for the rest of the world to possibly use. cPanel and Plesk are similar to that, except they require licensing and a little bit of money up front, and they allow you to, if you want to, make modifications, and you don't have to share them with the world. So we're going to stick with Webmin. Webmin. So what is Webmin? I'll talk about this before Virtualmin. Webmin. Let's go to webmin.com. Okay. Webmin is a web-based interface, or some people just call it dashboard, for system administration for Unix/Linux. They probably even have a Windows version too. Using any modern web browser, so I can use Chrome. That makes for an ultimate thin client. I can use my cell phone and my browser on my cell phone and control my servers. I don't have to have PuTTY installed. I don't have to have any special software installed to be able to talk to my server, as long as I have the appropriate usernames and passwords. Webmin removes the need to manually, and this is what I mentioned already, that's the big kicker right there, removes the need to manually edit user Unix configuration files. And lets you manage a system from the console or remotely. Doesn't that sound like fun? Doesn't that sound easier? Oh yeah, a shopping cart. That was another. E-commerce. I left that one off the list, didn't I? That's partly part of operational. E-commerce. That's a big one, actually, for business. E-commerce. Got to be able to sell my stuff. A little bit different than marketing. Sales is different than marketing, and actually selling is different than marketing. The actual process of collecting the money and selling the products. So Webmin was first. They basically, the programmers of Webmin said, what's the most common stuff that network managers are doing, which is tedious, and complex, and repetitive, and takes a long time to do with the command line. Let's figure out how to webify that. So we can make it an icon on the screen, like you click on users. I want to add users. So for example, I'll go back to my Virtualmin here. I'll click on system, and I'll come down here to users and groups, and I can add users, create a new user. Username, Jose. and give him rights to certain directories, allow him access into my system, set his password. I'm not going to actually create one. Hang on, let me fix my light real quick. Stupid timer. Okay, so that's a tedious thing to do with the command line, and you might not know. And this is one really nice thing that I like about GUIs, or like about dashboards like this, is it gives you all the popular options, maybe options you didn't even realize. Oh, that's right, I forgot. You could add groupings right here, or you could set the password right here and encrypt it, or do other things right here. It reminds me. So network admins or system admins, we used to call them sysops, system operators, can be lazy basically, or not have to go manually look up all the possible options A through Z. They're listed on the screen here. So adding, there's the system logs. Remember how I mentioned logs? We need to look at logs sometimes. And click there and take a look at, you know, the last 100 lines of logs files, if I want to, or the last 20. There's the last 20. Here's the last 200. I can search through them, so I don't have to know what was that syntax for. Jake kept typing in grep something or other the other day. I don't know what he was typing. I haven't learned Linux well enough like I'm supposed to. So this kind of goes against what my requirement is for this class. I want you to learn, and you do need to know command line for Linux, at least 10 or 12 popular commands, so that at the very least you can get this installed, because you can't install Webmin, you can't install Virtualmin from a web-based dashboard or a GUI if there is no GUI yet. Can't put the egg before the chicken, or the chicken before the egg. System boot up, we can see what jobs are run at boot up. We can look at these cron jobs. Those are the scheduled jobs, by the way. So you can see on most servers, and this is a fairly busy server. I've got 50 or 60 things that are done either every minute or every day or every hour or once a week or once a year. These are all chronologically scheduled jobs. I've got backups scheduled in here. Web stats, I have statistics that automatically get generated for the websites that this server hosts every, let's see, it looks like it does it once a day. And it generates, it looks through logs and it calculates how many people visited my website, how many people looked at certain web pages. And we describe that to our users so they can see what their traffic is on their website. Now, that's for system operations, the operational part. But the web part of it, being able to provide www.xyz.com, the domain part of it, where I can set up email and communications and file sharing, which I can certainly do here. You know, copy files back and forth with File Manager. But if I want to provide specific file space for my end users, and if my end users are separate companies, xyz.com and abc.com and 123.com, I don't want to give them all access and say, well, you got to log into www.uh.edu/blah, blah, blah. I want to give them their xyz.com and abc.com so that it looks like to them a personal experience. And they don't know, they don't need to know, they don't know that they're logging in right alongside 300 other people that are talking to their domains. Just like when you log into Amazon.com or Netflix.com, you certainly know that there are thousands of other people logged in, probably to the very same server that you're streaming data off of, but the menu that pops up and the recommendations for the movies and the videos it suggests that you watch are for you. They're tailored for you. That's what you want, a tailored situation. Does anybody in here watch Netflix? I assume everybody does. You may not pay for it, but you will watch Netflix. Do you find it interesting sometimes the suggested movies or episodes or programs that it suggests that you watch? You watch something, you watch a few episodes of something you binge watch, Dead to Me, for example, or Stranger Things. And then you're done with that, and then the next day you turn it on and goes, we suggest that you also watch this other stuff. Sometimes it's really weird and obscure what it suggests. But anyway, let's talk about Virtualmin now. So what Virtualmin does is it is a module of Webmin, which goes a step further. It says, let's specifically allow you to allow the system administrator or any user that you give access to virtual domains. And see, on this server alone, I've got, what is that, 40 or 50 domains on there. So in order to do that, I cannot use var.www.html with one index.html file. How do I separate that? How do I differentiate that? Got to set up, you could do it manually. You can do it without having to install Webmin and Virtualmin. You could say, well, okay, let me make a subfolder underneath var www.html and call it xyz.com. And then modify an area in the configuration file that says for xyz.com, don't use this folder, use var www.html/xyz.com/public HTML or something like that. That gets very tedious because now what if you want to provide email services for that domain and file services and all the other things that go along with it? You would want to use something like Virtualmin. And Virtualmin is very easy to use. Create a virtual server, domain name. What domain name did the customer register? xyz123.com. Now here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to dream up your own domain names, and they can be really simple. Like that. That's probably taken, Cargan.com, Jacob.com. Now I'm sure those are taken. Something like that. Come up with some domain names for me, okay? Now, we're not going to officially register these, but I'm going to be your registrar. You're going to apply for a domain name, and you're going to give me the IP address. I'll set up an assignment. I don't have an assignment for this. I don't want you to email me. I'll set up an assignment so you can submit it. I know I keep saying that, and I keep getting sidetracked and haven't done that for the LAMP stack, but I will. I promise I will. I want you to submit to me 2 or 3 domain names. Come up with whatever you want. And then it doesn't have to be .com. It could be, .ch or .co or .rocks. That's a top level domain name. Or you can make one up if you want. I don't care. By the way, does anybody know who .ch is? What country .ch is? Curiously, it's not China. It's not the Czech Republic. It's Switzerland. Why is CH Switzerland? Is it pronounced Switzerland? Is anybody from Switzerland? There's not even a language in Switzerland. They don't speak Swiss. They speak Italian, German, French. They speak 3 different languages there. If anybody ever been to Switzerland, every sign is in 4 languages: English, French, German, and Italian. So make up domain names, and then make sure you tell me in the assignment the IP address of which virtual machine here or container you want to run it on. Now you can run 2 or 3 all on the same container. In fact, I do want you to do that. I want you to run at least 2 on the same container. So Virtualmin is a package, or excuse me, a module that comes with Webmin. I want you guys to install Virtualmin on your container and then optionally on a VM too. How to install Virtualmin on, I'm using this Ubuntu 18, so I better Google for how to install Virtualmin on Ubuntu 18. Oh, look, DigitalOcean again. They're pretty good, aren't they? That says Ubuntu 16, but it's probably the same thing for Ubuntu 18. What was that? What really? Jessica, were you referring to CH for Switzerland? Probably because they gave SW to Sweden, and then Switzerland said, "Well, wait a minute," because you know the SWE is before SWI, and Switzerland said, "What the hell, man? What are we going to use? Let's use CH." And then China said, "Wait a minute, what are we going to be? Okay, you guys will be CN." So every country in the world has two-digit names. Who came up with those two-digit names? A group of engineers at Network Solutions in the United States. And so a lot of countries didn't get their choice. They just got what they got what the engineers at a USA company decided to give them. Sorry, trying to move this. Okay. So everybody's going to install Virtualmin. Before you install Virtualmin, before I even read the instructions, what should you do on your container or to your container? Let's take a snapshot. Take snapshot. Before Virtualmin. That was quick. It's pretty easy. It's pretty quick to put a bookmark in a book and then close it. Now we go to the instructions, how to install Virtualmin. Introduction, Virtualmin is a web front end that allows you to manage your server remotely through a browser and add multiple domains to it. It's more than just that. It says, in this tutorial, you use a script to install the free edition, Virtualmin GPL, that stands for GNU Public Licensing. The script will install everything you need to use Virtualmin, including a LAMP stack. Now, we already installed LAMP, but I wanted you guys to do it on your own. So you're probably saying to yourself, well, geez, dude, why don't we just do this and let it install LAMP for us? Because I wanted you to learn how to do it. It's going to install a DNS server so that we can associate IP addresses with names. It's going to install an email server. It's going to install postfix. There's multiple email servers, but postfix is the most common one. Prerequisites. Okay, we need Ubuntu. It needs to have at least 1 gig of RAM, so we might need to change our parameters. Let's go check it. Resources. Yep, got 1 gig of RAM. Good. Close that and go to here. A fully qualified domain name. You're going to come up with one of those, and you're going to tell me, and I'm going to be your registrar in your DNS server. I'll add those to the internal web server. 2 registered custom name servers for Virtualmin. Don't worry about that. Setting up the host name and FQDN. So first of all, you need to make sure that your machine, according to this, is updated. So I'm there in Ubuntu. So I'll go ahead and, again, I'm logged in as root. So what did I say about sudo? Don't need it. Git update. And this might take a while, I hope not, but I'm going to do that git dist upgrade. It depends on whether I did this last class or not. Notice it told you to stick the -y on there. That's so it will hit enter every time it asks the question. Yes, do you want me to upgrade? Yes, 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 yes. And this looks like a crap ton of stuff it's going to try to update. We'll see. Hopefully that won't take too long to complete that. Let's look at these remaining steps. It says make sure to check your host name to make sure it's valid. To check the current server host name, run that command hostname space -F. Now I'm going to try, while that's running, I'm going to try to see if I got SSH operating here. I'm going to hope that I do. So let's see. Putty, new session. Or you can call it PuTTY if you want, but that would be weird. 192.168.10.201. Let's see if I can SSH directly to my container. Like I said before, that's better. Uh, and it's probably not, the permit root login's probably not on. Let's go ahead and fix that while we're here on this particular container. I can't really do it right now because I think I only have one console. Let me try. Let me redo putty. I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna duplicate session. That's duplicating that session with all the same parameters. I'm logging into Proxmox because I'm still in Proxmox actually. PCT enter. Let's see if this works. 201. Oh, good. It's letting me have two console screens. Nano, etc. SSH, SSHD, config. I'm looking for permit root login. Oh, yeah, it wasn't on, so I want to turn that on. And again, this is usually a security issue, but I want to make it easy on me. I can go turn it off later. I'm going to turn it on right now. System CTL or service. Actually, let's try service. Service, SSHD restart. There's also system CTL, which is kind of the same thing. It'll let me restart that. So I should be able to log in as root. Now, I don't remember what my root password is, so I'm going to change it real quick. Okay, now I'm going to try to use SSH directly to go to, because it's better to go directly to. Oh, good. Looks like that's done over there. To my Jake 192.168.10.201. I'll call that Jake 201. Save, open, log in, root, MIS4397PROXMOX $. There, good. That's better. Do this instead rather than doing it this way. I'm going to close these, and that's because it's likely that you're going to forget where you are and accidentally install something on top of Proxmox or be doing stuff in Proxmox and realize, oh crap, I just screwed up the Proxmox server. Not only did you mess yourself up, but you messed your teammates up too if you have teammates. Change settings. Appearance. Change. 16. Bigger. Okay, so this is different. I hope you guys understand. This is SSH, and you actually get different output too. Let's see who's online. Good. So if I type in exit right now, and I'm on this Ubuntu VM, if I type in exit right now, it's going to close this SSH window and go away, and I have no risk of messing up Proxmox. So that's why probably it's a better idea to use SSH. You missed the class for the LAMP stack. Do I just Google it? Yeah, and that's somebody else. I think it was Cargan recorded it and sent me a link. I'm gonna try to upload that. Was that you, Cargan? Did you say you recorded it? So I'll try to upload Cargan's, and we'll see if that one will suffice. But yeah, you can go Google for, how to install LAMP on, if you're using Ubuntu, type in Ubuntu or CentOS and follow the bouncing ball, which is just like what we did. I did a little bit more hand holding on the video, but if you want to wait, I'll upload Cargan's link and we'll see if that works okay. Okay. All right. Make sure you install LAMP first, Jessica, before you try this, because I want to make sure that you know how to install the LAMP stack basics and test it first before you get to using this more complex thing. In other words, I want you to learn how to ride a bicycle before you get into a limo and be driven around everywhere. Or I want you to learn how to drive a car before you let somebody else drive you around. Otherwise, you will not learn well enough. There's, you know, some people come to this country and you know, their family had a car, but they always got driven around everywhere, and now suddenly they have to drive. Because it's expected in the United States that everybody has a car. What was I doing? Oh, okay, so where we want to be. Let's try this. It says, check out to see what your host name is to make sure it's valid. So host name, Houston name, host name. Now, if I just type in host name by itself, it gives me that name that I named myself in the container. If I do the -F, that says, give me my fully qualified domain name. There it is. That's good enough to at least start. jake-ubuntu-18.eilab-bauer-uh.edu, and that's working only because when I created the container, I said use the DHCP services that are there in the lab. Change the host name, you can edit it there. Well, sort of. You can't really edit it. Look at this. If you edit it right there and then you go back and change it in the container, it's going to overwrite your edit, and that's only specific to containers. That's just because that's a pseudo file. That file doesn't really exist. It's a pseudo file or a virtual file. So don't worry about deleting any host name files. You probably do want to modify this hosts file. Let's see what's in it. For the container, you'll notice it's got that in it. Begin PVE. Proxmox added this for me. Now you don't want to edit it yet. We're just checking it. Okay, so host file looks good. I got an IP address and I got a name. Now what you're going to do after you install Virtualmin is it's going to add additional lines. It's going to say 192.168.10.201 is also jakerocks.com. It's also, you know, monkeybars.org or whatever else you create. It'll add more lines in there for you, so we don't have to edit this file. I'm just showing you what these files are. So there's a file called hosts. You have a file just like this on your Windows computer called hosts, and I think I showed it to y'all the other day. Is that true? Under Windows, System 32, drivers, etc., you can modify it and add whatever information you want into there and make up your own domain names. All right, so we're just following along the bouncing ball. We don't need to do anything there yet. We don't need to reboot because we didn't modify anything, so don't reboot. It wants you to double check your network interface. Don't need to do that. We already know that's cool. We don't need to mess with DNS. So you can pretty much skip all of step. You can look at step 1. Probably don't need to execute any editing in step 1. Go through hostname -F. Look at these files that suggest that you look at, just so that you have an idea of where those files are and what's in those files. Installing Virtualmin. We're going to use the wget command. We are not using a package installer, and that's because Virtualmin, aka Webmin, doesn't necessarily have a package installer for Ubuntu or CentOS. It might, but we don't have to use a package installer. We're going to basically download it and install it on our own, just like you normally download and install a program in Windows or in Mac. wget. That's a command that literally goes out and gets the content. It looks for a URL on the internet and gets the file that it happens to find at the URL, and it just saves it in the local directory. Before you do this, I'm going to add a couple steps. pwd, let me prep my working directory, see where I'm at. I want to make sure I'm in my root home directory as the root user. I'm going to make a directory, mkdir space downloads. And I'm going to cd downloads. The reason I'm doing that is I don't want to clutter up my root directory with downloaded crap. So I'm going to put it right. I'm going to enter this downloads directory. So now I'm in downloads. Right there. See that? Now I might want to execute that wget command. I should probably make sure that wget is installed. It may not be installed. Type in wget, see what happens. Okay, it's installed. If you're using a distribution of CentOS or Ubuntu or Debian, where you type in that wget command and you get a syntax error, or not a syntax, but just an error, wget not found. Install wget. That's why install wget. And it will install it for you. Now this is going to say you don't need to because it's there already. Copy. Now, if you were to, by the way, if you were to put that up here, and I recommend that you do this, run that first in your web browser just to see what it looks like. It's going to want to try to download it to your local computer. Go ahead and download it. Open it in Notepad or WordPad or ApplePad or whatever the hell Apple uses. MacWrite, whatever they use. No, don't always use that. No, don't look in the freaking store. Jesus Christ. Excuse me, sorry. I probably told my computer to go look up some crap. Anyway, use Notepad to open it up. It's probably a very short little install script that does some other stuff too. Oh, here we go. Notepad. Just use Notepad. I'm on my other screen. It's doing some stuff to me in this other screen over here. Where did it go? Oh, it's back here. Here it is. Oh, that's hard to read. Let's not use Notepad. Let's use WordPad instead. Notepad's not putting any carriage returns on the end of it. Show in folder. Now you could look at it in Linux too, but you know, just look at it here. Right click. Open with a big sigh of relief. No, open with WordPad. Okay, let's take a look. See what the crap is this thing? Okay. Oh, look, it's a configuration file. Maybe. There's a bunch of comments. That very first line up there. By the way, if you ever open a file like this, a text file, and there's a comment on the first line and an exclamation point. Comment exclamation point means execute this information in the shell. That's what the bin sh is. That's literally the Linux command. Execute this stuff. Here's some variable names being set. Here's some additional variable names being set. Here's a printf command, an echo command, more printing. What does this look like? Does this look a little like JavaScript to you? Printing some data on the screen, echoing some data on the screen. Printf means print stuff into a file. So it is a little script. Actually, it's fairly long, a little longer than I realized. Might be a good idea just to look at the script to make sure, at least the first few lines of it, to make sure it is what you intended to download in case you downloaded the wrong thing and it's some sort of dangerous thing. Okay, now, oh, it wants us to edit the script. Good. Well, the script comes from the official Virtualmin website. You might want to open it. Oh, and okay, so they're saying to do the very same thing I just did. Check it out. They suggest using nano. I suggest using less. Don't use nano unless you intend to edit a file. Now it wants you to execute that script, and here's how you execute it. Now you don't have to do that bin sh because it was enumerated in that file. I can just type in /install.sh. Oh, wait a minute, did I not get it yet? Oh, I didn't get it yet. I got it to my Windows computer. Right click. Now I got it. Up arrow a couple times. Permission denied. Oh, maybe I have to make it executable. That's probably why it's telling me I got to do that. If you don't make the file executable, I'll go ahead and teach you that. Why the hell not? These little things over here tell you what that file is allowed to do. The first column indicates whether it's a directory or not. It has a dash there, so it's not a directory. It tells the ownership. The next three columns tells me as the owner of the file, in other words, the guy named root, is allowed to read this file, allowed to write to this file, and then that fourth column there, which currently has a dash in it, if it had an X there, it would allow me to execute that script. So I'm going to change it. Watch this. chmod u plus x. Change the mode, not mod. It's short for mode. Change the mode of that file. Space. U for me, the user. Not you, the user, but me, the user. Plus x. Add the x in that column to install.sh. Now get an ls minus la. Now you'll notice there's an x there. Additionally, it changed color. Now this is specific to PuTTY. PuTTY says, hey, when I find anything that has an X in this column, I want to change it to a certain color. That's just to help you notice, hey, there's an executable file here. Now let's try to execute it. Now the reason I put the ./ there, for those of you that don't understand this, and you might know this from DOS already, from Windows already, that first line there, that single dot, that refers to the folder you're in right now. The folder I'm in right now is last modified at that time and date. It's taken up 3 bytes just to enumerate that folder. It's owned by root, its group is root, and it's a directory. The 2 dots, what do you think the 2 dots are? The 2 dots are the previous folder. So if I type in cd space ... I'm going to hop back in the previous directory. Now I'm back at my root home. CD downloads. So if I want to execute something from within this directory, if I just type in install.sh, it may or may not look in the directory you're actually in. It says command not found, and that's because it's looking in other directories when you try to execute a command. I'm going to go look in the bin sh directory and the sbin directory. Oh, no, wait. Oh, I'm sorry. You want me to look right here for a file. I didn't realize you wanted me to look right here for an executable file. If you're just editing a file, like nano install.sh, you don't have to. It says, oh, okay, you want to edit some text file that's right here. But if you're trying to execute a file, normally they're not in this folder. They're in special folders. So you have to do /install.sh. Now we're running the install script. That's interesting. It took a while. It's an interesting pause there. It scares me whenever I see interesting pauses like that. Welcome to Virtualmin. The script must be run on a freshly installed supported OS. Well, guess what? I've got a freshly installed supported OS. It does not perform updates or upgrades. You've got to do that manually. That's because it was not installed with apt or yum. System currently supported by Ubuntu. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm on Ubuntu 18, so we're good. If your OS is not listed, then it does not. It might work, but it's not recommended. So these are the only distributions that Virtualmin likes to run on, and Webmin likes to run on. If you don't have one of those, if you're using something else, they might suggest, why don't you use Plest or cPanel? Do you want me to continue? Now you'll notice that both of those are lowercase, the Y and the N. If the Y was uppercase, you could just hit enter. It would take the Y, but it's not, so I have to enter a Y. Create a swap file. Let's go ahead and let it create a swap file. Would you like for me to try to create a swap file? I guess, yeah. I don't think it's necessary because we do have some swap space. Too little memory and unable to create a swap file. Well, it just told me that all I needed was 1 gig of RAM, those lying bastards. Okay, well, that's all right. Let's fix that. Let's go fix it. How do we fix it? Go back to Proxmox. This is a container. Now, in the case of a VM, we'll have to change it a little bit differently. Let's go to resources, memory. 1 gig wasn't good enough. What did it say it needed? It needed specifically 1572. All right, fine. Let's give it 1572. Let's cut it right to the bone there. There is swap space there of a gig, but for whatever reason, I couldn't find it. I'm going to click OK. Let's see if it added it. We might have to reboot. Free minus H. How much free memory got? Oh, look, it added it on the fly. Now I got 1.5 gigs. Now let's try to reinstall. Let's try to start Virtualmin again. Continue, yes. Yes. I want to say no, don't create a swap file. Just assume everything's good. A swap file is like a special file that it can swap data in and out of RAM. And at this point, we're just kind of following the bouncing ball. I don't think there's very many other questions we need to answer. Let's see how long this takes. Now, you'll notice that it said, make sure you do this on a freshly installed system. If it fails for whatever reason in the middle of this script, you can't usually restart it. You know, if you made a mistake or you exited out of the script, like if I were to press Control-C right now, it'll break out of this script, half installed. If you try to install it again, it'll probably complain and say, oh, I've already started, so I can't continue. What do? Roll back to your snapshot. So I have you creating snapshot, snapshot. Roll back to before Virtualmin, re-download the script, start it again. Now, what's it doing right now? It's probably, if I had to guess, downloading a bunch of code. Because that little install program, that was like a few hundred bytes. That wasn't the code. It's probably downloading a bunch of code in the background right now. I'm going to duplicate session and look and see just what the heck is it doing. Here's another comment tool. You notice I used free earlier to see how much memory was in there. Free space minus H makes it human readable in mags. You can also use DF or disk free. How much space do we have on the disk? Let's do a DF space minus H. Now you'll notice we've got several folders, not really disks, but see that first one there, the root disk? I want to see if this thing is downloading anything, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to show you another command. Watch. Please watch for me this command, DF, excuse me. Watch the DF command. In other words, execute it every 2 seconds. And I'll bet you that number will go down. Maybe not right now. Maybe it's just checking things, but that number will start going down as it's downloading code. That's how you can tell something's going on. Every 2 seconds might be a little bit aggressive, so I might change that to watch minus N10. Watch every 10 seconds instead of every 2 seconds. Every 2 seconds is a little bit much. Okay, so I don't know how long this is going to take because I haven't installed Virtualmin in a while, so it might take a while to actually install it. And the reason we probably don't see that going up is it probably is loading a lot of it in memory. Free minus H. Or let's do this. Let's watch free. Let's watch for free. See if that number's changing. Oh yeah, it is. Now that number's going up and down, but that's okay. At least something's going on. that tells us that we don't have a dead system over here, that something's going on. I don't know how long it's going to take on this phase 2, so let's go ahead while that's going on and continue reading in here. The script will display warning messages, blah, blah, blah. This script will take some time to complete all the steps. Okay, well, that's expected. It might take, I don't think it's going to take more than 10 minutes. Configuring Webmin's root password. Virtualmin is an add-on to Webmin, and by default, Webmin uses the system root and user password. That's okay, leave it at that, okay? So, in other words, don't do this part. Don't do step 3. It's too hard to manage all these different passwords. Just leave it as the root user, okay? Step 4, configuring the Webmin using the post-installation wizard. Once this is finished, once that is finished, eventually it'll pop up and say, okay, it's done. Now you need to go navigate to this address. Now it's probably going to say, you're done. Go navigate to https jakeubuntu18.eilab.blah.blah.uh.edu:10,000. That's not going to work because this is not a real domain yet. So where you're going to want to go to, and this is only going to work if you're in the EILab on the VPN network. If you guys don't have VPN access working yet, you won't be able to get past this step yet. Make sure you email me and let me know, hey, I don't have VPN working. I can't continue with this. But presumably once this is done, you should be able to go to https://192.168.10.201, the IP address of your VM here. IP address of this machine right here, :10,000. So similar to how Proxmox uses port 8006, Webmin uses :10,000. Oh, that's interesting. We're already getting some data. Maybe we can see some stuff already. Maybe we can see a partial installation. Let's try it. Ah, that's giving us something. Root. That's actually, I've never done this before. I never tried to log in before it's done. Probably not a good idea, but I'm doing it anyway. This is the screen that you get. This is the newer Webmin. Here's your dashboard. Here's your little pull-down menu, kadink, and there's where all the other items are, which I was showing you earlier, like Webmin, system, adding users, the system and server statuses, installing, usermin and filtermin. Okay, good, so we were almost done. Now the instructions are going to talk about a post-installation wizard. Your browser is going to show you this. Your connection is not secure, blah, blah, blah. Login is root. Once you've logged in, you'll see the introduction screen. Now, that's interesting. I didn't see the introduction screen. Probably because it hasn't been presented to me, but there will definitely be an introduction screen. It's going to say, hey, you need to answer a few more questions. It's going to ask you, which database do you want to use, Postgre or MySQL? I recommend using the MySQL database because we're familiar with that. I would say take the defaults on everything if you can get this far, except for when it asks for the size of the database. It's going to say, what size databases do you plan to have? Small, medium, large, extra large, or huge? We're not going to create huge databases of hundreds of thousands of records. It would take up way too much memory. Just choose large, which is the middle. Choose the middle of the pack. Other than that, I think you can just take the defaults on everything else. And then you hopefully should start being able to create a new server, a new virtual server, except that with containers, we may have to do 2 additional steps. I was kind of hoping this would finish first. Let's see, 5:20. You know what I should have done to make this go faster? I should have added another CPU, because I'm sure it's just crunching numbers in the background. I can probably go ahead and show you what I need to show you to make sure it's working. Just click there. Go to networking, very first thing that you do. Once you get it running and get the dashboard, you're on the Virtualmin dashboard here. Go to networking. Go to network configuration. Okay, click on that. Click on network interfaces and take a look at what that page shows you. That's interesting. It says there are none activated at boot. Let's click activate now. Okay, so activated at boot didn't show anything. It hasn't set that yet, but change the tab up here to active now. Like, what networking do I have operating now? Something's working. ETH0. Let's click on that. IP version 6 enabled. We don't really care. We can disable that if we wanted to. Make sure that that IP address right there does indeed match what you set in Proxmox. It should. Go to Webmin. Go to Webmin configuration. Actually, excuse me. Go to Virtualmin and Virtualmin configuration. Where do I want to change this? No, actually, I think it is under here. Pardon me. What am I looking for? Oh, I know where it is. Excuse me. Look under System and no, I'm sorry. It's under Virtualmin. You need to go under Virtualmin because you need to change probably the templates for when you start creating web pages. So make sure that on the dashboard you're on Virtualmin. I know I'm on Virtualmin because that's Webmin, that's Virtualmin. Webmin, Virtualmin. Go to double check it. Let me double check a few things here. This is supposed to get pulled up in this post-installation wizard, so I'm just trying to jump ahead of the gun here. It's probably not showing me the stuff that I need to see with respect to Virtualmin because it's still in the middle of installing. Oh yeah, there it goes. Excuse me, it hasn't actually installed Virtualmin yet. Still installing it. So I couldn't find what I needed to show you. All right, well, let's go back to the instructions. Eventually, it'll say Virtualmin up there. Create new virtual server. You're going to click on that. You're going to put your domain name that you came up with in there. jakeblablablah.com, whatever it is. You can add a description if you want. Give it a password. You can make it different, but I would recommend giving it the same password as you gave your container or your VM so you don't get confused. The reason it allows you to give a different password here is in case you're setting up a domain for a buddy of yours and you want to allow him to log in and just admin his or her own domain. Check all the boxes except for this one, this IP-based virtual IP. Don't turn that on. That's not going to work for us, but you can check all the other. Make sure they're all checked. SSL website, that's fine. Check that. Click create. It'll scroll down the screen there and say, okay, now you've got a server called, jessicarocks.com or whatever it is. Now at this point, the only way you'll be able to actually see it and use it is if I enter that domain name to IP mapping in the DNS server, which I can only do that if you email it to me, or you add that to your Windows hosts file here within Windows here. You go look under C:\Windows System32. You can certainly do this on your own computer if you wanted to do it. System32 drivers, and it's similar in Mac, but I can't tell you exactly where we're looking for that file, that hosts file. That's the same thing as this etc. hosts file. It does not do us any good at all to save it in this file because the server is already going to know, yeah, well, I know where jakerocks.com is. I'm its host. You got to tell your client computer here where it is. So I need to just copy that path. I'm going to run the WordPad. I'm going to right click and run it as administrator. It's going to say, hey, are you sure you want to do that? Well, yes, I'm sure. I know what I'm doing. Where's WordPad? It's hiding back here somewhere now. I'm going to file, open. I'll look in this folder for all files, all documents. Hosts. And I'm going to add. I'm going to go ahead and add. I'm going to preempt and say, well, 192.168.10.201 is actually a domain name called jakerocks.com. Because I'm a spelunker. Okay, so jakerocks.com. Save that file. Make sure that the DNS is working by opening up a command prompt on your computer. And type in ping jakerocks.com. And it works, it's pinging, and that's only because that IP address is alive. The domain doesn't work yet, I haven't set it up. Okay, gosh, there's still a lot of stuff left to do there. I'll sit through this. You guys don't have to sit through this if you don't want to. If you want to stay here, let this finish all the way to 23. You can watch the video later. If you guys want to get off and do something else, or do this if you want. See if it's updated and says Virtualmin there yet. Now it says Virtualmin. System customization. No, that's not what I wanted to get to here. Virtualmin addresses and networking. So ignore that stuff I said earlier about when I was going back and forth. Virtualmin system addresses and networking. We need to double check that because we may need to add information on this page here with respect to the IP address. Okay, that looks good. System settings. Let's go to system settings and Virtualmin configuration. Let's check that. Here we go. This is the screen you need to get to. Virtualmin system settings, Virtualmin configuration, network settings. Right there. There it is. Click that. Network interface from virtual addresses. This might work, but it might not. If it does not work, in other words, if Virtualmin complains to you after installing, oh look, I think it's working. I think it's done. Installation complete. That's what it says. You can't go to that. You got to go to the or HTTPS. So that's good. They do finally give you just the IP address because they're always, oh yeah, he hasn't set up a domain yet. Let me log out and back in. That's probably what I need to do. Where's the log out button? Sign out button. Let me sign out and back in because I think it will now do something different. It'll go through this post-installation wizard, which it did not before because I preempted it. There we go. That's what you should get. Post-installation wizard will allow you to configure Virtualmin. Let's click next. About 7 or 8 questions here. Take the default for that, so next. Virus scanning, we want it to do that. Run clam maybe, nah, click next. I'm just taking default so far, guys. Next, spam assassin. MariaDB MySQL. Yeah, we're going to use that instead of Postgres DBL. Set the MySQL password. Virtualmin does not know what the current MySQL root password is. It must be set here. All right, well, let's set it to the same thing, MIS4397, as your container's root password. Next. So I did have to type in something there. Uh-oh. Can't connect to local MySQL server. Check that the MySQLD is running. Oh, we installed LAMP the other day, didn't we? We installed LAMP yesterday, and I think we set a password. To prevent others using your system, is not set MySQL password. Let's leave it blank and see if it works that way. I don't know if it will. Yeah, so I need to fix that. How do I fix that? Here's how we fix that. How to reset MySQL root password. Oops, not Windows. Geez, screw Windows. Linux. I forgot what I set it to. When I installed the LAMP stack the other day, I forgot what I set it to. Actually, instead of Linux, let's specifically say Ubuntu. Stop the service. Okay, so let's stop MySQL in its track. Stop running it for a minute. Okay, so it's stopped. Start MySQL without a password. Okay, so we're going to start it up without requiring a root password real quick. Just going to complain about, say, this is dangerous. Are you sure that's what you want to do? Yes. I'm going to sit here for a few moments, and then eventually I will get back the prompt. Can't do anything yet. I have to wait for a minute here. I need to connect to MySQL. Actually, while it's doing it in that window, I should be able to do it in this other window. I've got 2 consoles in there right now. MySQL minus U root. Well, hang on. It can't connect to local MySQL. It says it's not running. Can't connect. Let me figure this out. I'm going to turn the recording off for a minute while I'm doing this, just because I don't want it to keep recording dead air while I figure this out. And you guys don't have to keep watching for right now. Okay, found it. Those instructions that I found were obsolete. There's a couple other, there was something missing there. So I need to stop SQL. Let me show you what I did. So here are the instructions. First of all, it wants me to stop MySQL from running, which we did that already. Actually, let's try doing this again. Let's try running that again to see if it allows me to run it again. It may not. Enter password for the user root. Okay, so all we did to reset the root password is we did that again, which we did earlier, MySQL secure installation, and it took care of it for us. So let's go back to this, see if we can continue. Incorrect MySQL password. So I reset it to something that I know. Good, now it worked. So that was my fault earlier, and that's because I had run that MySQL secure installation and set the password to probably 123456 or something else when I was installing the LAMP stack as a test the first time before Virtualmin. Now this is the thing I was talking about with respect to small, medium, large, huge. Change this to, actually not large, let's do medium. We don't need a 2 gig database for anything. So yeah, let's go next. Go medium and next. 512 megs is plenty of space for what we want to do. But next, I think that was the last question it asks. Now it's going to list about 12 or 15 things on the screen that it's checking. All of the different packages that it's installed to make sure the configurations look good. And if at the bottom of the screen it shows you're good to go, Virtualmin is installed and ready to run, then you're okay. If it stops and says Virtualmin's not ready to run, then we need to look in some logs and see why. But I think we should be okay here. Minimize these things. I don't need to. That one is inactive. I close that. Here's another command I like to use a lot of times. Top. It shows me the top processes. It's kind of like similar to the Windows Task Manager. Webmin is taking up lots of CPU cycles. Doing something there. Actually not taking up a whole lot of space, but it's creating some database space. This should not take very long. This should take just a few more moments. I'm going to pause recording until this is done. I logged back out and back in from Virtualmin just to make it start this post-installation wizard again. Just taking the defaults again like I did earlier. Oh, what was that? See system control stuff. So if something happens, see system control stuff. Let's do that. Okay, so I need to stop that. I'm going to reboot the container. Make sure everything's okay. It may need to roll back to the snapshot, hopefully not, but let me reboot the container, make sure that it comes back on, log back into Proxmox, the Virtualmin. I'm gonna pause recording for just a minute. I think we're okay. Change my SQL password. We're gonna click OK here. So I think we're okay now. I had to reboot. After I ran the MySQL secure setting, I had to reboot. I'm going to go to medium system here, not large. And this is where it got hung up last time. Let's hope that it finishes. Good, it finished. So now we're on this. We do need to change this too, by the way. For DNS zones created by Virtualmin to be resolvable, the primary name server record for each zone must be set to something that can resolve. That name is not going to resolve, because it doesn't exist in the real world. So rather than putting that, DNS is created by Virtualmin to be resolved. The primary name server record for each zone must be set to something that it can itself be resolved. Let's set it to, and we can change this later, but let's put an IP address in of a known DNS server that we can modify and mess with. Let's try 192.168.1.31. Actually, let's put in ourselves and see if it's okay with that. 192.168.10.201. In other words, I'm putting in the IP address of this virtual machine. Tell it to skip for resolvability. Don't try to resolve that IP because it's an IP, not a domain name. Go ahead and add 192.168.1.31, which is the EI Lab domain server. Then go ahead and add 8.8.8. No, we don't even need to add that because it's not a public domain. So we should be okay with this info. Virtualmin gives you the option, blah, blah, blah. Store plain text passwords. Yeah, go ahead and do that. Normally you don't, but let's do that so we can read the passwords. Is now complete. Let's click next and see what happens. Recheck and refresh configuration. Let's click that. Checking every single package to make sure they look okay, that they're operating properly. If you remember, I created a domain mapping already called jakerocks.com, 192.168.10.201. So let's make that our first domain that I create. Reloading Webmin, everything's good. Now you can turn that on, by the way. That'll do little pop-ups in your windows. So I allowed that. Okay, so Virtualmin is running. Let's click on Virtualmin. That was Webmin. Now we're on Virtualmin here. Create virtual server. There are no virtual servers running. Let's create one. Domain name, jakerocks.com. Description, Jake's test domain. And at this point, you might want to do another snapshot of your container because right now it's got a nice fresh installation of Virtualmin. I'm going to go ahead and skip the snapshot part, but you need to do a snapshot just in case you mess up further. Admin password, I'm going to make it the same thing. Make it the same thing as my root password just for simplicity. Default, advanced options, default, enabled features. Let's turn everything on except for that. Okay. IP addresses and forwarding, let's see, network interface, that's good. Let's see if this works. Create server. Complui, creating, adding. Looks good so far. If it finishes, we will see jakerox.com pop up right underneath here. And then we can go try it. Let me show you what's going on the server now. So here's the server. Instead of using var www html, we're not going to use that folder anymore. Now we have a new folder. It gets created for every domain you create. It creates a new folder. Now you'll notice it's called jakerox. Without jakerox.com, doesn't stick the .com on there. It just sticks the first part, not the TLD. Let's go into jakerox. That other one that was Jake, that was a previous actual user. So now I'm in this folder called jakerox, and it's specific to just this domain. See the ownership? There's a folder here called public HTML. Let's go under that. That's equivalent to the var www HTML root directory or directory root. Now that's where you will create index.html or index.php. Let's put something in there. I'm going to echo. Let me show you another command. Jake, here, echo h1. Jake is awesome. I'm totally awesome. And I'm going to pipe that, or not pipe that, but I'm going to redirect that into a file called index.html. Now let's not use less, let's use cat index.html. That's the only thing in that file. Now that I know that jakerox.com works here because I modified my Windows host file, this is not a real domain. Didn't register to GoDaddy or anything. Yeah, it works. So I've created my first virtual domain on a virtual machine. Now you can go create additional machines as long as you remember to add the DNS information here to your host file on your computer. Then that will work. Let's see what else was under this folder, because I saw some additional. Oh, look at that. There's some other stuff. What is this? AW stats and icon. I don't know. Let's look under stats and see what's there. HT access. Interesting. Looks like there's a way to get some statistics. Ah, look at that. It's asking me to log in. What do you think it's asking me to log in as? It's asking me to log in as the user that I created. What user did I create? I don't know. Let's go click on jakerox and see what I created. Edit virtual server. Administrative username, jakerox. So that's what it's asking me to log in as, and I made the password the same as the root password. So let me try that. jakerox, password. Oh, okay, well, it's for, I don't have access to it anyway. That was interesting. Oh, it's because there's not anything in. I could put data in there. This htaccess file says he's got to log in. He's got to authenticate before I'll show him anything in this folder. How about Jake is just okay in the stats folder? So I authenticated earlier. Now I get Jake is just okay. The reason we're saying forbidden is because there's nothing in that folder. And by default, most web servers say, don't just spit out whatever the directory is in that folder unless you have an index.html or unless you have a specific file that you've specified there. There's really no file in there except for that special htaccess file. I need to read up on that stats folder and see what that's intended for. That's interesting. I bet I know what that's for. I bet that's so that users can log into, because what gets installed with Virtualmin and Webmin is something called Usermin on port 20,000. So if I go to, I could go to 192.168.10.201, which is the IP address, but now I can go to jcrocs.com. And actually, I'm going to stick because it uses SSL https://jcrocs.com //20,000. You get that little warning because I don't have this. It's a self-signed certificate. It's not registered. Usermin. You log in not as root, log in as jcrocs. That was the user that I created for this domain. Password. Oops. And you will see an abbreviated version of Virtualmin, which is only specific to that user. Like email, for example. I can edit my signature file. I can add things to an address book. In other words, this is basically a GUI email app and file repository. I can use this as a file repository. Let me log out of this. Actually, no, I don't want to log out of that. Am I logged in as, see who I'm logged in as. I might be logged in as root to this. Oh, I am. So I'm going to log out of this as root. I'm going to log in as that jcrocs user to Webmin. Rocks. And let's see how it looks, if it's different. And it should be significantly different. It is. In other words, I only have access to my domain that was created for me, the jcrocs domain. I can edit users for that domain. I can set up email aliases for that domain only. If the root user had created another domain for me, like Jake Rolls, and he gave me the same username of jcrocs for Jake Rolls, then I would have seen both of those domains here. But you notice I can't create new domains. I can't do anything other than stuff to do with this domain by itself. Okay, so what did we learn today? We learned how to install Webmin and Virtualmin and log into Usermin on a container, and we learned how to edit our hosts file on Windows so that we could pretend like this was a public registered domain name in the world. Your hosts file always overrides DNS. Now, is there a domain called jcrocs.com? Probably. Be a pretty cool name, wouldn't it be? So if you wanted to see if there was, I'm going to go again, edit that. I'm going to run WordPad on my Windows machine here as the administrator. You get that little error, click yes. I'm going to File, Open. I need to go back to C:\Windows. It's under Windows, System 32. I wish they didn't hide it so far in. And I could probably make it a shortcut to this. In fact, I probably should do that. Drivers, etc. Don't see anything. That's because you have to change this to give me all documents. Host, and that's because the host file, does not have an extension. That's the file I want. Click open. There's jcrocs.com. If I take that out, comment it out, save the file. Now I'm going to try pinging jcrocs.com. Actually, not from there though, because that'll still work. It'll still ping from there. Oh, that's interesting. It's pinging the public IP, and that's because this is the machine I'm actually running it on. If I ping from my Windows computer, ping jcrocs.com, it's going to go, oh, that's this other website out in the world. It's probably some really cool guy. I don't know who jcrocs.com is. Hopefully it's not a porn site. Okay. Oh, I know these guys. They named their band after me up in Catskill, New York. I haven't talked to them in forever. So anyway, there's jcrocs, jcrocs.com. Okay, I'm going to end the session now. I know this went a little bit over, and I told everybody else to log off and just let me finish this. I'm going to post this to YouTube so that you can watch it at double speed like you watch a lot of your other classes. This all needs to get done. I need to see evidence of this by this weekend, okay? Lamp stack, install it manually first. Then install Virtualmin with the wget. Make sure you're making snapshots along the way. Come up with some domain names, create them. If you run into any tech issues with it's complaining about SQL or whatever, and you couldn't figure it out in this video, from this video, send me an email and I will look at your container, try to get it fixed for you. Now keep in mind, if you create a container and you do this on the container, I can get into it with the enter command from Proxmox. If you create a VM, which is standalone from Proxmox, and you used a password other than the MIS 4397 default password, I won't be able to know what your password is, so you're going to have to share your root password for your virtual machine with me. I can't get around it. So make sure you share it if you made it anything other than MIS 4397 Proxmox $, okay? See you on Monday. I'm not going to do a Zoom meeting tomorrow on Friday. I want you guys to concentrate on this, get that working. I'll check emails to make sure you guys aren't stuck anywhere. But Monday at 4 o'clock. Go Cougs. I'm going to do this and click with my left hand.